Police, all civilians off of the streets in the city of Johnstown. This is an emergency. All civilians, other than store owners, all to the city. No civilians allowed in the city. Leave.
Man.
This is the story of the great Johnstown flood of 1977. For the pictures and the words that tell the tragic story, here is Channel 6 News Director Ron Stephenson.
They said it couldn't happen again, but it did. Johnstown hit by still another devastating killer flood. The known death toll over 200 now and certain to rise. Property damage in the hundreds of millions of dollars from one end of Johnstown to another. All the low-lying areas inundated by deadly floodwaters that crested as deep as 10 feet in the downtown area about 5:30 Wednesday morning. All up and down the river valleys. Devastation, death, business and industry at a standstill throughout the Stony Creek and Conemaugh valleys. As word of Johnstown's plight spread, all available emergency plans were put into action. Mayor Herb Fuel declared a state of emergency very early Wednesday morning as walls of water surged through the various neighborhoods of Johnstown. Governor Schaap declared the city and 7 surrounding counties a disaster area shortly after noon Wednesday, and at latest word was still trying to get President Carter to do the same. The final death toll may not be known for days, perhaps even weeks. The grim statistics began trickling in early Wednesday morning. The first report, 2 dead. That list grew steadily as emergency personnel made their way into devastated neighborhood after neighborhood, some of them never affected by flooding conditions before. Families awaken in the middle of the night in normally high and dry areas to find floodwaters surging around their homes. Parents and children in some cases swept to death by the floodwaters as they tried to make their way to safety. There were reports of small dams or ponds breaking in some of the narrow valleys, massive power outages, telephone disruptions, gas cutoffs, radio and TV off the air, cable service cut. Through the entire flooding emergency, the only Johnstown-based radio or TV station not affected was WJAC Radio. By mid-afternoon of Wednesday, Johnstown was virtually under martial law, and the police had orders from Mayor Fuel to shoot any looters on sight. There was looting. No one reported shot. Help and assistance for Johnstown and her stricken suburban municipalities, as well as the small towns all up and down the river valleys, coming in from all points. By early Wednesday afternoon, Governor Milton Schaap, Senator John Heinz, Congressman John Murtha, and a host of state senators and representatives were personally surveying the damage in the Tri-County area. For a while, those top officials were using the main control room of WJAC-TV as a command post to communicate with Washington and other points. At that time, the TV station had still not returned to the air because of interruption of power to our transmitter site on top of Laurel Mountain. The only radio or TV stations based in Johnstown that were able to remain on the air through the flood emergency was WJAC-AM. The transmitters for that station are well out of the flood area, located in the Hooversville area of Somerset County, and our sister station has been broadcasting information vital to the stricken community right through the emergency period. After Governor Schaap toured the area by helicopter, we talked with him and with Senator John Heinz outside our studio. Senator Heinz, how do you assess the situation?
Well, I saw what Agnes did to Allegheny County, western Pennsylvania in '72, and this is every bit as bad, if not worse. It's very concentrated in certain areas. It's been tremendously destructive. It's very bad, and the one thing I want to see for sure is that we don't have a 3 or 4 day hiatus before the federal government comes in here. And I'm flying back with Governor Schaap, who's consented to come along to the White House tonight and make a report to the president. We're going to show them a videotape of the damages that was taken starting this morning and through this today. And I think it speaks 1,000, a million words as to how desperately plagued this place has been with the flooding of last night and this morning.
Governor Schaap, how do you assess the situation?
Just the same as the senator has just stated. In my experience in working with Agnes in 1971, that was much broader in scope, covered more counties, and did much greater damage around the state. But the intensity of this flood here in Johnstown and Clyburn and other places that I've seen is just as great. Buildings torn into matchsticks, cars tossed around like they were toys, people stranded and many of them homeless and things of this sort. One of the things that I've done today is to order the Pennsylvania National Guard and our state police to start assigning people into the communities in this area in western Pennsylvania that have been hit to go on security, on police duty, because I have heard reports of looting, and we're just not going to allow this to become another New York out in this area, and we will assist the local police in maintaining order.
Senator Heinz said he was going to, you were going to accompany him to Washington. Have you have an appointment with President Carter?
I spoke to, well...
Go ahead. Sorry, Milton. Go.
I spoke to Stuart Eisenstadt, who is one of the aides to President Carter, about, maybe a half hour, 40 minutes ago. Gave him a verbal report of this. He, of course, cannot act on a verbal report except to alert people in the administration as to what is coming. As the Senator said a moment ago, we are taking this film that was made by this station, and we want to thank you for it, because I agree with the Senator, it's worth 1,000 words, 1,000 pictures. You just can't describe the horror that's going on out here without such a picture. So I think that we will be able to get Washington to take some immediate action to have this declared a federal disaster area, so that all the help that can be organized from Washington financially to help people get restored to business and money for their families and things of this sort can start to flow into this area.
The two absolutely most vital services that the Federal Disaster Assistance Administration can provide are first communications, and second the Corps of Engineers to help clean up the debris, remove the damage that's taken place, prevent against flooding in case there's another thunderstorm. The communications is really necessary. I ran into many people in Johnstown today who right now are bearing with considerable fortitude the problem, but are concerned about a loved one, a parent, a teenager. They don't know where they are. They can't get in touch with them right now. Now, what is right now forbearance could turn into alarm later, and we've got to help people ease their concerns about their loved ones. And that's why communications is probably the first thing. The governor is right. We need security. There shouldn't be any looting, and the state police and the National Guard, to the governor's credit, seem to be right on top of that. It's a massive job because it's hard bringing them in here.
Johnstown Mayor Fuel has personally been out of the neighborhoods of the flooded city practically day and night with very little rest. I talked with him at approximately 5 p.m. Wednesday and asked him to assess the situation then.
Well, at this hour, I think that we're starting to get things pretty well codified. Our security is finally gelling together. The police are meeting with the National Guard units and the state police. Security should be rigged out pretty tight. Then our commo should basically start to come. Hopefully, you'll be on the air in an hour or two from now or immediately, and that way more communications will get out. We're starting to get water supplies to our neighborhoods and also food supply into the various different neighborhoods. So slowly we're starting to come back.
Are there any special places being set up as refugee centers, you may as well call it, for people forced out of their homes?
Yes. Right now, we're still using one of the major components is the Meadowvale School. The 876 Armory, they can go to that particular area, or they go to the rehab center where the state police will be by moving into that area if that's convenient for them. Those are the three basic major areas that we have operating right now. The reason why we used Meadowvale in a center because it was so devastated and the problem is so immediate and they need so much attention right in there that seemed a logical place to place it.
How much problem did you have with looting?
We had major problems in the early morning hours, as you know, and when we made the declaration, shoot any looter, and the governor conferred, he said the same thing when I talked to him when he came into town. That's the orders he issued to National Guard and to the state police, and the looters just disintegrated from Johnstown.
Mayor, I don't think anyone thought this could ever happen.
No, I don't think they did either. As you know, that there were many times we told them about Sam's Run. There were many times we told them about Solomon Run, told them about Shaney Run, and we keep telling them about those things. And I hope now they got the message loud and clear.
I never saw water just come down off the hillsides like that.
Steve, last night we were at Meadowvale School. We got trapped in Meadowvale School at 1:30 early, this morning. And by 3 o'clock, there was a wall of water coming down Messenger Street, 15 feet high, and had to be going 70 miles an hour, simply literally picking up cars and wiping things out. The people who were with us, the children were with us, they were awed and just terrified at what was going on. And I've never seen anything like that. McMillan Street, Messenger Street, and it wasn't until early this morning when we got out about 5:30 and the water started to get away and the lights started to come that we really saw all the devastation. We saw cars going by, trailers, homes. We heard screaming during the night. It was just horrifying. But I want you to know that the people there at Meadowvale, the people around that area was really hard hit, were just heroic in what they try to do. They helped each other out. They put lifelines across the streets at Pine Street and in Oak Street and those areas, just trying to get into the Meadowvale complex to be at higher ground and a little bit more security. And to those citizens, as we all know, it's just great.
Well, it's going to be a tough road ahead, but the people around here don't give up, and I'm sure they're not going to give up on this.
No, we're not going to give up. We're going to start all over again and do it even better than we did it before.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Eyewitness accounts from those who actually went through the great Johnstown flood of 1977 will be pouring in for weeks. We have a few of them tonight. Here is well-known contractor Burl Hasselrig.
I came in from Philadelphia yesterday, and this is really unreal, because while in Philadelphia, people asked me where I was from. I said, I'm from Johnstown. I told about 5 or 6 people that, and they all commented, that's a big flood town. I said, oh, no, we don't have floods in Johnstown anymore. We're flood-free. And then to come and find this, it's really unreal. And I had a lot of apprehension this morning because we hadn't heard from my daughter, Jackie, the announcer at WJNL, and so I came to town to see if we could find her. I found her car about an hour ago and couldn't find Jackie. But after a search of the Sheraton Hotel and over at the Lee Hospital, I found that she was rescued out of a tree next to this radio station and taken to Lee Hospital, and that she is all right. I haven't seen her yet, but I'm sure everything's all right, and I feel much better. And this is her car right here.
Another report from Johnstown City Councilman Donald Cott.
This morning, when I heard about this devastation, I was a little concerned. My father's in Lee Hospital, and I have 2 aunts living down in Cambria City. And when I got down here, I was utterly shocked. This is the first time in my life that I've ever seen a national disaster. I've heard oftentimes about the '36 flood. This is the first time I've had a chance to see it firsthand. Well, the only thing I can say is that Johnstown has gone through 2 before, and I think with the cooperation of everybody and everybody working together that we'll once again pull ourselves through another disaster. I just feel so hurt and so sorry for the people that have had to suffer so badly. It just behooves me to see this muck and disaster. It's just heartening.
Downtown Johnstown businessmen have been hard hit, but even the smaller ones appear determined. One of those is Tony Trisello of Keystone Shoe Repair.
I've been walking all over town, and believe me, folks, it's devastating. Everything is in ruins. I've been up Woodville, and it is even worse there than it is in the main part of town. I've seen businessmen in the main part of town, and I think I am in bad shape at my business, but when I look at their places, I feel a little bit better because they are ruined. I talked to 2 particular businessmen. They're talking in a $250,000 damages, not counting their homes. It's sickening. I see it and yet don't believe it. I've seen looting. I've tried to stop. I'm still walking around the main part of town. I love Johnstown, but it's bad. I don't know what could have prevented it, but the looting could have been stopped. Again, I just hope the businessmen recuperate very, very quickly, and let's all have faith, and let's make Johnstown once more better than it was before.
I suppose it was inevitable that there should be raging fire amid the raging floodwaters, and it did happen in the Hornerstown section of Johnstown. Among the many reports circulating through our area that night and early morning were ones concerning the fires, supposedly raging out of control in the city. They were supposedly numerous. In fact, there were only 1 or 2. This one at the Roble Construction Company on McMillan Street in Hornerstown. The fire started shortly after midnight, apparently triggered by lightning. A witness reported seeing several flashes where the electric power enters the building, and the fire broke out just after that. City firemen were unable to reach the scene because of the flooding at first. The flames spread through the two-story building that housed the construction company's offices and warehouse. Volunteers from the Oakland Fire Company, who had been out on another call, happened to spot the blaze and rushed over to it. But there was little they could do about that time because the structure was engulfed in flame, the building destroyed. Rayford Roble of the construction company said some equipment and some records were saved, but he couldn't estimate the loss at that time. There was no one in that building when the fire broke out, and fortunately, no one was hurt.
Once the floodwaters receded enough for people to get around, the dramatic effect of the storm began to strike home. A most common heard remark from those who escaped with nothing more than wet basements was, "I never dreamed it was this bad." As reports began coming in from one area after another, it seemed each one had suffered worse. There was death and destruction all along the Conemaugh and Stony Creek River valleys. And while it would be difficult to single one area over another as the hardest hit, apparently the heaviest loss of life occurred in the Tanneryville section of West Taylor Township sometime during the dark early morning hours of yesterday. That was when a recorded rainfall of more than 11 inches was too much for the Laurel Run Reservoir of the Greater Johnstown Water Authority. The dam broke, and a wall of water cascaded down the steep terrain into the Tanneryville area, wiping out everything in its path. The stricken area was accessible only from helicopter. There were reportedly 12 bodies found, with approximately 40 other people missing and feared lost. Jace Riblett of the West Taylor Volunteer Fire Company was an eyewitness to the wall of water that crashed through the narrow valley.
As far as I know, we'd evacuated as many people as possible, and we was at the top of McCreary Street at the time. We was watching the water come down, and as lightning would flash, we could see the water at the bottom of the street, and it was washing trees and trucks, and I saw a part of a house float by. And as you can see over here, we lost a building and 3 trucks back here. There used to be a building, and then the mountain was like 150 yards back. It was a rough experience. Everybody was scared, but I think we're doing a pretty good job here, and if we can just, get as much help as possible, we're doing pretty good as we are here.
Mary Jo McElhaney of Park Avenue, a civil defense nurse, went into Tanneryville by helicopter, and she had this report.
I would say this is one of the worst disasters I've seen in my nursing career, with civil defense also. The people here have been here for 2 days without any kinds of maintenance, and they just didn't know where to turn. We arrived this morning, the first thing we heard the women and the men saying was, "Thank God you're here to help, we've needed it." They just can't believe that this happened. They can't believe it's as bad as it is. It's just unbelievable.
Another area outside of Johnstown which was extremely hard hit by the flood was the downriver community of Seward. As the swollen waters of the Conemaugh River rolled downstream, they swept away everything in their path. Roads and bridges were washed out, houses were destroyed, and a mobile home park was reduced to rubble. People climbed onto roofs and into trees to escape the floodwaters. Some of them did, others were not as fortunate. Among those who did survive were Al and Lois Golding.
I woke up approximately 4 in the morning. Water was already about knee deep. Kept getting deeper and tried to get the cars out and couldn't. So we stayed with the trailer till it started floating. Then after it floated for a while, we got on the roof. Then when it floated into a tree, and when it caught on a tree, we got off the roof of the trailer and got up in the tree. There was wife, myself, and son, and a neighbor and his wife and 3 babies. We shifted and handed them all up a tree in relays and got them all up there and saved them all.
So after we waited in the tree for about 5 hours, we saw the helicopters coming and trying to pick people off of the other roofs and everything, and the helicopter couldn't get to us as we was in the tree. So they put a rope down, and the one boy got out on a rope, and they pulled him up out. And then they came back and got on an island and loaded us in a big Army helicopter to take us out. That's all I can remember about it.
Because WJAC-TV was off the air from 12:30 on Wednesday morning until approximately 11:30 this morning, a total of 35 hours while this disaster was raging around all of us, there has not been an opportunity to show you much of the film that was taken in the field. Film that was taken right from the very beginning when the first rain started to fall on Tuesday night, and then the torrents of water raging through the streets on Wednesday morning. We're going to show you that film. It's about 16 minutes of it. And as we see it, we're going to have some dialogue here with these people that I'd like to introduce at this point. On my far left is Nancy Coleman of the Johnstown Tribune Democrat. Nancy, I think, is going to be able to give us some interesting information because she's been to various centers where hundreds of people are being cared for, people that have no homes, people that need food and shelter and medical attention. On my immediate left is Robert John, veteran reporter for the Johnstown Tribune Democrat, who has had personal conversations with Governor Milton Schaap, who incidentally has been here twice, with Senator Heinz, Congressman Murtha, and many others. Bob will perhaps tell us what we can expect in generalities in the way of federal aid and so forth. And he's also been personally to some of the flood-ravaged areas. And on my right, a guy that got a real workout yesterday, WJAC-TV's well-known Marty Radovanek, who was out there with cinematographer Dave Delosier for hour after hour after hour in the city and suburban neighborhoods doing on-the-spot film reports. So we're going to talk about this great disaster as you watch the film that we will now start to show you. It begins at the top of the Johnstown inclined plane. And Nancy and gentlemen, I can imagine that in our viewing audience there may be people who had grandfathers who looked down on the city of Johnstown from this vantage point in 1889 and saw the ravaged valley below. There was no fire burning at the stone bridge in this one, and of course it was not the wall of water that came surging into the city, such as when the South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club dam broke. But the devastation and the death was down there, and as these shots were taken early Wednesday morning, not too long after daylight and the fog lifted from the valley below, little did most of us realize the devastation and the death that we were going to get knowledge of in the following 24 hours. Nancy, how are the people being taken care of?
Well, Ron, actually, I've only visited the Southmont shelter, but I've been staying in town with some friends who are volunteering down there, and I spoke to several families this morning, and unanimously they had nothing but praise for the volunteers, the nurses, the doctors, all the personnel who are there. I understand Red Cross is operating out of Southmont, and the Civil Defense, all the groups that have pulled together to try to help the homeless in this thing. And using my friends as an example, when they heard about this early in the morning hours, they kind of looked at each other and took care of their own immediate needs, and then they said, we've got to do something, and they went down to the school. And just overhearing conversations from other staff people and volunteers down there, I know that this is a prevalent attitude, that you just don't ignore something like this. You've got to do something. These are fellow human beings, and in a time of distress like this, you ignore your own personal needs and do what you can to help. I spoke with an elderly couple, both of them disabled. Their home is completely wiped out. They have no insurance, and they spoke through tears. And I get a little choked up now just remembering this. Tears came to my own eyes as I was talking to them. And it's pretty hard to be a hardcore professional reporter when you hear what some of these people have to say. And I went from them and spoke with some people who were not in tears but resigned to not knowing where their next nickel comes from. They are absolutely broke. They don't know whether they'll be able to move back into their apartments. They know nothing. They don't even know whether the man will get paid tomorrow, and they've got a small child and some elderly people to think of. And after that, I spoke with two little old ladies who must have been in their 80s, and they were taking things, if I don't mean this to sound as a criticism, but they could see humor in the situation. Their ride in a vehicle with the National Guard, for instance, over the slippery roads, had some comic moments to it, and they could see that, and yet they weren't making light of the situation. The people at the shelter, the homeless who are there, are very grateful to what's being done for them. And the volunteers that I saw are just, they're doing their utmost to help these people.
Marty, what did you know about floods before you came to Johnstown?
You know, I was thinking about that this morning after we spent all day out yesterday on the field. The first flood, now I grew up in Ohio, and the first and only flood that I can ever remember was the bottom of our street with 4 feet of water for about an area about 50 feet long, and that was it.
That was a flood?
That was that was big back home at the time. I had no conception. I had read, of course, about the 1889 flood and about the flood of 1936, but I had no idea what damage could be done until Dave Delosier and myself walked through areas of Dale. Dale was conjured up pictures of wartime destruction. It is impossible to describe the feeling that you have as you're going through these areas.
We will have some film on this series from Dale. This particular segment is down along D Street in the West End, and here, as in so many areas, it wasn't a case of a river spilling out of its banks. It was a case of rivers of waters coming down from the hillside and the mountainside where there had never been a river before, never been even a trickle of a stream. But the rain, 9 to 11
something I
inches.
found so much up in Dale. A lot of people told me that they didn't have flood insurance because they said, why do we need it? Living where we were, they said there's never been anything in the way of water, and their whole house was gone, and they...
And of course, you recall, Bob, the concern around the city earlier this year, following that horrendous winter we had, the coldest on record, and the snow piling up, and the fear that we were going to have sudden thaw and another flood in Johnstown. They started to make preparations then.
You know, I might mention, Ron, that I come from a flood family. My mother's parents lived on Union Street at the foot of the inclined plane at the time of the 1889 flood, and they took refuge in the old Union Street school building. And I lived in Union Street at the time of the 1936 flood, and I saw the mud and the debris and the damage to buildings. And I remember running for the hills when somebody yelled, "The dam is broken." But I don't think I've seen anything that compares to the damage that's been created this time. The damage to the streets and the roads and buildings is almost unbelievable as you travel around the area. The way the roads have just heaved up in places, and the dirt is washed out on the highways, and the homes have been damaged and destroyed, completely destroyed. And automobiles piled on top of each other. Nothing like that in 36. Of course, we didn't have many cars then either. But it is ironic, perhaps, that we were concerned about the damage to the highways during the acute winter weather we just had. The freezing and the thaw has caused so much problems. But I can see where the bill for repairing streets and roads and highways this time is going to be absolutely tremendous. I think it's going to be a long-range program just to get back to where we were. And we thought we were just beginning to make some progress, and hopefully we're going to have some modern highways here. Now I don't know what's going to happen. It's difficult to imagine what can be done.
Well, the type of terrain in which we live, you're talking about highways now, I think it's pretty safe to say that in our terrain, if we build a modern 4-lane highway here, you're now approaching a cost of over $10 million a mile in some cases.
Well, the average is around $3 million, but that does not include right-of-way. That's construction cost. You get into, out in the countryside, you can figure about $3 million per mile construction cost alone. Used to figure around $1 million just 10 years ago.
But something like the Johnstown Expressway, where they have to build bridges and elevate the highway over the city and shore it up at various places, the cost is just, it's astounding. So when you talk about the damage being in the hundreds of millions of dollars, which it's definitely going to be, and in my opinion could even approach or surpass the $500 million mark. Just in highways alone, you can see where it would be accounted for. And I didn't get around as much in the field as our photographers did, or as Marty did, but I saw with my own eyes some limited areas. And
I think Marty will agree, the way the streets and roads have heaved up and been washed out and undermined, it's hard to believe.
Of the bypass and 56 going up towards Richland that are undermined for miles. There's at the Solomon Homes there, the exit of the Solomon Homes, there's an area of the exit about 75 feet long that is no longer there. It's gone. There's just a big hole. It's just astronomical. It's really unbelievable if you haven't seen it with your own eyes and walked through it as we did.
50-foot slabs of concrete, which you know how much they must weigh, just moved completely off their
even in the most outlying areas, there's a lot of damage to highways, not even in the downtown and in the surrounding areas. I'm talking about towards the northern part of the county, and there are damage everywhere that is going to cost, as you said, astronomical amounts of money to repair.
I think to this point the people have just been absolutely fabulous in their response to the emergency. And knowing the people of Johnstown as I do, I'm sure that spirit is going to continue. There's certainly been great suffering and great personal loss by hundreds and hundreds of people. But I'm confident that everybody is going to pitch in and work and do the best they can in what is definitely going to be a very, very long road to economic recovery. I'd say, Bob, it's going to take a minimum of 5 years before the Johnstown area gets back to normal economically, wouldn't you think?
It's going to take a long time. I hope it's not that long, but I'm impressed by the fact that Governor Schaap and our legislators in Harrisburg and Washington have moved so quickly to get us assistance, and this is important. As you know, the governor appealed to President Carter to declare this a major federal disaster area, and that approval came through Thursday morning. The governor's here 2 days in a row inspecting the damage, meeting with state officials, and of course that means that business people and individuals and municipalities can apply for assistance, loans and grants, mostly loans. But in talking to the governor today, he emphasized one point, and he said, make this clear as possible, especially to municipal officials. When they apply for aid, they must keep very accurate records in order that they can verify to the Federal Disaster Relief Administration every penny that they spent and get reimbursement. And so I hope the municipal officials remember that, because he said that was the biggest problem they had after Tropical Storm Agnes in '72, the lack of financial records to gain reimbursement.
Well, I don't suppose we're ever going to shed our image now of being the flood city. Most of us had thought we got rid of that after the '36 flood and the Army Corps of Engineers built the river control project. But we'll never shed the name now. But really, this could have happened anywhere.
Right. Very unusual.
The weather experts have told me.
Yeah, last night on WJAC Radio, Steve Richard did an interview with a meteorologist out of the Pittsburgh office of the Weather Bureau and a statistician. And the meteorologist made the point, there were a lot of people, and I heard many complaints from residents of this flood-free tag and of the Riverwall channel, but they had said that without the river channels being where they were and without the cleanup that they did just last year and this year, devastation would have been much worse than what it was. So we can be thankful if some degree they said in one point, I think Charlie Kunkel this afternoon said in one of their areas they measured 11 inches of rain. There isn't a flood channel project in the country that could have withstood that type of rainfall in such a short period of time. But
well, to give you some idea of how it happened, I can recapitulate a little of what Charlie Kunkel of Laurel Management Company told us. And of course, they operate the Greater Johnstown Water Authority, which services many, if not most, of the customers in the Channel 6 viewing area. And they have various reservoirs in different valleys that by air mile, you could probably get from the one on the extreme east to the one on the extreme west in a distance of 10 miles or so. Out at North Fork, which is one of the main reservoirs for water supply for Johnstown, Mr. Kunkel said they had about 1.5 inches of rain. Now, moving over to the next reservoir, which is just up over the hill from the WJAC-TV studio, they had maybe a couple of inches. And then going further away from the city to the other end till we get to the Laurel Run Reservoir, which was located above Tanneryville. By actual documented recording at that location. They got 11 plus inches of rain in a period of less than 24 hours, with most of that 11 plus inches coming down in a period of 14 to 16 hours. And unfortunately, it was confirmed today that the Laurel Run Reservoir did go, it collapsed, sent a wall of water down onto Tanneryville, and the disaster there is of such magnitude that all of the details are still not known. But reports from the scene indicate at least 12 dead in Tanneryville and 40 or more missing.
Speaking of weather, Ron, do you recall ever seeing such a brilliant display of lightning over such a long period of time? It seemed like it just continues for about 6 to 8 hours.
This was another point that the meteorologist made. He said it was something that could happen anywhere, but they called it a freak storm. The thunderstorm cells that moved over the area actually became stationary. Now, thunderstorms generally move anywhere from 25 to 50 miles an hour. They're wrapped up, but these were stationary. They didn't move, and it's one in a million shot, but Mother Nature rules. That's the only thing you can really say about it.
Nancy, what experiences have you had with floods prior to this time?
I would have to say nothing. No experience other than something similar to Marty's. A lot of wetness in the backyard, creeks overflowing and maybe cutting off a highway temporarily with 50 feet of the highway underwater, making it slightly inconvenient, so you've got to go the long way around.
One thing that makes it very difficult in a disaster of this magnitude for everyone that wants to help and for everyone that needs help is the breakdown in communications. And Bob John and I were talking about this before we came on the air, and he said if you really want to find out what is going on, you almost have to get a reporter out there to get it right at the scene, because telephones, while they're operating in some areas, the authorities are too busy to take time out to answer the questions of reporters. They're handling extreme emergency situations. Some areas are isolated. You can't get to those. There's no communication, as we found out with Tanneryville. So it's very difficult, as much as the newspaper people and the radio and TV people want to bring you all of the latest, most accurate information to help you as best we can, that information just isn't available as fast as we would like to have it.
I point out, I called the governor's office this morning, and they weren't sure where he was at. So.
And it turned out the governor was in Johnstown.
In Johnstown, yes.
The governor, go ahead.
I find something kind of ironic in this whole thing. I spent the greater part of yesterday in Hornerstown handling communications from that area by ham radio on a civil defense net. And people would see me with my radio and assume that I knew everything. I would know where their husbands and wives and children were, or if not, I could just make a quick call and find out. And this is the thing that is most urgent to the people, and yet it's the thing that has to wait until last. You have to concentrate on food and water and searching for bodies and the injured. And then the last thing you do is worry about where somebody is, in what part of the city somebody is who's alive, who can't reach somebody else in another part of the city.
Yes, Nancy, and while I'd indicated earlier about the tremendous cooperation of most of the people, there are a few, and they've gotten through to us on the telephone, and I'm sure maybe you've received some of the calls. There are a few who have been inconvenienced by the situation, who have a couple of feet of water in the cellar, and that's all of the damage they have, and they just can't understand. Why don't you say something about us? Why can't you get the fire company out here to take care of me? And although this type of person is very, very far and few between, nonetheless, there are some of those out there. And I can understand people being like that when there is just so much suffering and destruction going on that everything is being directed towards getting people homes that have no homes, getting elderly and sick people out of housing that has no water or electricity or utilities, getting the medical supplies to the hospitals and the other centers that have been set up throughout the area, and just So much is being done, everything humanly possible by everyone who's willing to help, and yet the few complainers about a foot or two of water in the cellar. But I guess that's human nature for some people. Marty, we had indicated earlier that you did yeoman service yesterday out in the field, and we're about to see some of the fruits of your labor, which we had hoped would have been on the news programs yesterday.
Most of what we did, we had hoped would get on.
But we didn't have any news programs, and one of the reasons, or the reason was that the power was just completely cut off to our transmitter site atop Laurel Hill Mountain, and we were off for about 35 hours. But we're on now, and we want you to see this series of interviews and eyewitness reports that Marty Radovanek did yesterday with cinematographer Dave Delosier.
This is Main Street in Johnstown, the flood-free city, or so we thought until the rains hit yesterday afternoon and last evening and all during the night. I'm standing right in front of the Embassy Theater, and our photographer is now panning down towards City Hall, and the devastation is just unbelievable. The waters have not yet receded. This is at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. As you can see, cars are piled up in the middle of streets. We've had reports of extensive looting, and the damage estimates will be somewhere in the hundreds of millions of dollars. Most of the people you talk to that are walking around the downtown say they've never seen anything like it. They can't remember devastation of this degree. Again, the water levels have not said to have been as high as the 1936 flood, but it would be hard to convince some of the people who have lost everything here in the downtown. Mr. Soroka, what has been the extent of the damage to your places, Centertown Mall, Lincoln Towers?
Well, the Centertown Mall, of course, we had about 4.5, 5 feet of water. The GB store and the Centertown apartments are in pretty sad shape. You know, they're going to need cleaned up and refuse moved out and so forth. Our Lincoln Tower building here, again, the first floor had about 4 feet of water and debris. I just ran into Dr. Lippman over here, and I particularly pity him because he had a lot of equipment and records and so forth, which will be impossible to replace.
Have you had any injuries or deaths that you know of in either of your buildings?
Nothing that we know of, fortunately. Our people over at the Centertown Apartments were evacuated in time by the yeoman job that the city firemen and police did, and of course, most of it is property damage.
And what you are looking at right now is the Jupiter store on Main Street downtown. There are no words that I could possibly use to even begin to describe the damage. And as you can see, this particular store, as have many stores in the downtown, have been extensively damaged. Water damage. There has been reported looting in many stores in the downtown. As we were driving down, we passed a jewelry store. The front windows were broke out and the cases had been cleaned. Mrs. Panarello, you work here at Zion Jewelers, or United Jewelers, I'm sorry. Was your business looted any time?
Not only was it completely washed out, but it was looted also. There was about, I understand, 25 went in through this plate glass window, through the door, straight through the main door, and took things out in shopping bags. Now, I didn't see it personally, but there's owners around here, and this gentleman right here did see it.
Can you estimate your loss?
I have no idea. I wouldn't have no idea where to start. I know that everything is a complete loss.
And you know that there was some merchandise taken out.
Oh, there's trays of rings missing and watches and everything. You see, rings, things like that there you can account for if it's in this here muck and stuff like that. But no, there's quite a bit of merchandise missing also. Not only flood damage, but like I said, missing. And I understand, like 3 different times we tried to get into the city. Well, naturally, you couldn't come in by vehicle, so we tried coming by foot. Finally, when I did get through, I went clear over by Johnstown High, and I came over, and they told me that it was just looted about an hour before.
Mr. Weiser, could you give us an estimate of the total damages to your place of business?
Somewhere between $150,000 to $200,000.
Are you completely wiped out?
Well, at the moment, the merchandise is definitely all wiped out in the store and the fixtures and remodeling and everything else. There isn't a dime's worth of merchandise that's worth a dime.
Do you have enough insurance to cover the loss?
We have no flood insurance whatsoever.
So none of this will be covered
No,
by?
I don't, unless a theft. I understand there's a lot of stealing going on. Whether my insurance might cover stealing, and if we can prove it, and how are you going to prove it in this kind of condition? It's almost impossible.
Do you feel that there was any looting done? I mean, are there musical instruments that have been carted away?
I would hate to tell you what I heard, but and who, and so forth, you know, the usual gang.
Chief, you have been down here and you were inside the store when we came by. Has there been any looting here or looting in other areas that you've seen?
Well, there hasn't been too much looting here that we can really see. There's a lot of water damage. A lot of the looting occurred in the jewelry stores. Anything that was very small, they took it right out of the windows. They really hit the family sporting goods store up the street here. They took about 35 weapons, handguns, and ammunition from the premises. I did come upon it, and there was nothing I could do. I was the only one here, so they got...
All right, now you saw the looters. You saw the looting going on. Who were the people that were doing it?
It's hard to tell. It was everybody. It looked like everybody, really. That's right. It was a lot of younger kids.
And now we have heard reports that the looting began even before the floodwaters had receded. Did you see anything to validate that?
I didn't see anything of that. No, I was busy up on Johnstown at the time, Bedford Street.
Mr. Glosser, what is your assessment of the damage to your store?
I haven't the faintest idea what the dollar total is, but it's substantial. The entire first floor is pretty well gone, and the basement we know is total because it's still underwater. The water in the basement at this time, which is about 7 o'clock in the evening, is just about 2 feet under the ceiling.
We had an eyewitness earlier tell us that they saw some people leaving with merchandise from your store. Do you know how badly you've been looted?
We were looted. The looting took place over a period of about an hour and a half this morning before the police and National Guard came into town, and the extent of the looting I'm unaware of at the moment. I don't think it was too bad above the first floor. From an eyeball assessment of what I've been able to see in those departments that are above the first floor, it did not look particularly bad. On the first floor, though, they tell me there were about 50 people in the store, and I would assume that 50 people could loot pretty well.
Mr. Gunner, what's the extent of damage at the downtown Penn Traffic store?
Well, we've had a complete loss of the basement and the first floor. All the merchandise, all the fixtures.
Can you put a estimate on the monetary value?
Well, I hesitate to do that at the moment because we do have book inventory figures and we'll have to survey those first. But it won't be difficult to come up with the exact value of the loss.
Can you give us a round figure, though?
No, I'm sorry. I'd like to, but I can't do it.
How about insurance? Is the loss covered by insurance?
All Penn Traffic properties are fully covered by flood insurance.
Okay. When do you expect to be able to even think of reopening your store, and what are your cleanup operations? Have you formulated any plans for those?
Well, yes, the cleanup will begin tomorrow morning. We're going to pump out the basement first thing in the morning. We have people scheduled to begin the cleanup. We expect the insurance adjusters to be here tomorrow, and process will begin immediately. We do have a mezzanine, second and third floor, and fourth floor that are undamaged, and we hope to be back in business in those floors as quickly as we possibly can.
Do you see any potential layoffs of your employees during the cleanup period?
Yes, there will be some temporary disruption in employment. There'll be a temporary disruption in our service to our customers, but we certainly hope to keep both of them to a minimum.
Behind me is Solomon Run. This is in Dale Borough, and to give you an idea of the type of destruction that was caused by the Johnstown flood of 1977. Those are entire houses that have been wiped out, automobiles and debris just strewn through the entire area. We were told as Dave Delozier, our photographer, and I were walking down that they weren't allowing any other traffic to come down in this section of town for fear that the road was going to collapse from subsidence underneath. This is just some more of the unbelievable destruction of this flood that you honestly cannot describe unless you see it with your own eyes. Mr. Sutton, Mr. Behe, we understand that both of you were at home here on Solomon Street when the floodwaters hit last night. Can you tell us what happened?
Well, the first thing that happened is, as usual, the street here started to rise with about 2 feet of water. And we thought, well, it was just going to be a nice little downpour. But the longer it rained, the higher the water got. And the first thing you know, why, the cars that were parked in front of the Z-Bar across the street started to move. And they moved in the direction of Mr. Behe's house. And then they started to move not only from the parking lot, but from up above by the Solomon homes here. And then it seems like everything broke loose at one time. Everything all was confused. The neighbors start running around and everything. And
have either one of you ever seen anything like this before?
No, I have no. Well, I was in a 36 flood, but it wasn't as bad as this one.
This was worse.
This was worse. This is more property damage.
Are you totally wiped out? Do you have flood insurance?
No, we have homeowners.
No, I have a real good policy with a local insurance company, but when I went up a year ago, when the governor said that we should get insurance, they told us that, well, we weren't in an area. We'd have to get more people in the street to sign for it. Although across the creek there, the club, the hunting and fishing club, they got insurance. But
what are you going to do now? You going to go on, rebuild, or?
Well,
I guess so.
I'm going to repair mine. I'm sure of that. Have to, if it don't topple over.
It's Mr. Behe's might topple over. We jacked it up underneath there, and then mine is all the whole downstairs, the cellar and everything's all full. I still got 4 feet of water in the cellar yet. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'll tell you the truth. I just don't. I don't have any idea. I just hope that when the governor spoke on WJAC that he meant what he said about helping us with the federal aid and stuff like that, because I just don't know. I'm pretty well disgusted, I guess, you know.
This is John Ross of 983 Bedford Street. John, what happened to your home? What is it totally destroyed?
Well, the inside and that, and all my furniture, except for a few items of clothing and that, I've up and all been destroyed and that.
Were you home when the flood hit?
No, I was away. I didn't get home till about 3 in the morning, and I noticed that the high waters and that, and I tried to get to my house. My wife, my young child was in there, and here I found out that they were over to church and they were come safe in that after for a few hours there I was worried about them, and here they were over to church.
Have you been able to get inside your house?
Yes, I've got in there and I removed all the clothing and that was possibly saved, and that, and a little bit of dampness and water got to it, but I got what I could get out of there for right now.
Did you have flood insurance?
No, I didn't.
Have any insurance at all that might cover part of your loss?
I should have a covered loss of my car, which my garage behind was swept away, and I think that's about all the insurance I have to cover that.
Mr. Reese, you told us that you lived here in Johnstown during the 1936 flood. How does this flood compare to that one?
Oh, this flood has much more debris, and it's the water is more rapid, and it's going down, causing much more destruction. And it's a disaster if ever I saw one.
Do you have any damage to your home?
Oh, yeah. Cellar full of water and everything down there, clothing and refrigerators and, clothes dryers and washing machines. And the same on this side, too.
In everything that we've seen, and you seem to typify most people, even though the ones that were hardest hit, everybody seems to be in good spirits. Do you feel like you're in good spirits, and if so, why?
You have to be in good spirits in order to take a thing like this, otherwise it would get you down. This is a terrible thing.
You plan to just clean up and go on with your life?
Sure. Clean up and go. Clean up and go. Clean out the cellar, maybe tomorrow or the next day, and away we go. Can't do anything about it.
But the one thing that stuck out on all of our travels today was that the people that have been hit the hardest, all are grinning and bearing it. They say they'll rebuild, and that truly is the story of the people who live here in Johnstown. I'm Marty Radovanek for Channel 6 News in flood-ravaged Johnstown.
As we pre-record on videotape this special feature on the great Johnstown flood of '77, there is an ominous rumbling outside our studios. The time of the recording is 3:40 p.m. The clouds are dark, and torrential rain is again falling on a flooded city. We can only hope and pray that this will be a brief thunder shower that will pass over. The ones that hit us on Tuesday night were to have been perhaps heavy thunder showers, but it was a record-breaking torrential downpour that dropped in some sections of the immediate Johnstown area more than 11 inches of rain, and in terms of damage, created the most devastating flood Johnstown has ever known. No one thought it could happen again, but for the third time in 88 years, it has happened. Johnstown devastated by still another killer flood. The first one, May 31, 1889, when a wall of water from the broken South Fork Hunting and Fishing Club Dam swept down the Little Conemaugh Valley. More than 2,200 died then. In March of '36, several days of relentless rain accompanied by the heavy runoff of snow in the mountains triggered a flood that staggered Johnstown again. The Army Corps of Engineers came and built the massive flood control walls along the Stony Creek and the Conemaugh after that. That made Johnstown flood-free, so everyone thought, until this week. This time, destruction more widespread than '36 or even '89. Water not only spilling out of the riverbeds, but surging in raging torrents from the hillsides and mountains, which could never, ever absorb the record-breaking 9 to 11 inches of rain that fell on much of the Johnstown watershed. Neighborhoods that were high and dry in previous floods torn apart in this one by normally trickling runs and creeks that were transformed into raging killers. Mothers, fathers, children swept into the torrent and certain death. The destruction is almost unbelievable, even to those who have been able to get around from area to area to see it with their own eyes. Hard-hit communities and neighborhoods include Senior, Krings, Riverside, Ferndale, Moxham, the 8th Ward, Hornerstown, Kernville, Downtown Johnstown, Morellville, Cambria City, Coopersdale, Tanneryville, Seward, Dilltown, Winburn, Walnut Grove, Old Conemaugh, Mineral Point, Bon Air, Franklin, East Conemaugh, and on and on and on.